For the most part, that advice still works, but my mind's been changed a little bit. So in 2020, we really started to research our success stories. I wanted to find commonalities among them, and we found some interesting things. We found really two big commonalities that all of our success stories had in common. The first one is most of our success stories have some type of fear of loss element. They went on dates with other people. Their ex was terrified of them going on dates with other people, and that was a reason for commitment. Not necessarily a great reason for commitment. More on that in a second as well, but there's a fear of loss element. The second really big insight we learned is that most of our success stories got to this point emotionally during a no contact rule where they kind of didn't want their ex back anymore. It's the second insight. It's that insight that I think is the most powerful when it comes to silence. Now, most people assume that if you're silent, your ex will take that as you moving on and therefore they'll miss you, but it's actually more complicated than that. We've actually seen firsthand the difference between someone who authentically wanted to move on as opposed to someone who pretended like they wanted to move on. And the results are clear. Literally trying to move on is actually the best strategy for not only getting over an ex, but getting them back as well. So here's the point I'd like to argue. I think the most important thing about silence after a breakup, about the no contact rule after a breakup, is that you shouldn't break it until you've gotten to this place emotionally where you're ready to outgrow your ex. You're ready to get over them. You don't have them on the pedestal anymore. Generally speaking, this lends itself to longer periods of no contact. And it gets really messy when you dive into the data because most people who try no contact rule fail it the first time. And so it tricks us. When I say this tricks us, think of it like this. Let's say you're intending to do a 30-day no contact rule. Around day 21, you can't take it anymore. You break it a little bit prematurely and talk to your ex. So that's 21 days where you're trying to move on to your ex. You have the right intentions, but you just can't do it. So you break it. So what do you have to do? You have to start the no contact rule over from the beginning. And then you see it through to the end. 30 days. That's a 51-day no contact rule. And the important thing is the intent of the silence. Are you outgrowing your ex? To me, this is how long you should be being silent. Yes, we're finding that most people can get to this point where they're ready to outgrow their ex after 30 to 45 days. We're also finding people sometimes need longer than that. And it gets messy because a lot of times people break the no contact rule prematurely when they shouldn't break the no contact rule prematurely, which adds to that intent of silence time. But I think the critical strategy is getting to that place emotionally where you are ready to move on from them. But why does that work? So there's 5 stages that most avoidants will go through. First one is they avoid all things about the person. Second one is as they're avoiding all those things about the person, their feelings begin to bubble to the surface. Then they try to suppress those feelings and they go back and forth, pogo sticking between the two stages 2 and 3. Where the feelings begin to bubble, they suppress. Feelings begin to bubble again, they suppress again. And then they begin to move on. And then after they've moved on, they have nostalgia for you. I wrote an article actually yesterday before I filmed this video where I lovingly referred to these stages as pogo sticking. Because literally an avoidant will jump back and forth between them often. And it's hard to nail down which stage your ex is in, but oftentimes when your ex is giving you hot and cold signals, they're pogo sticking between stages 2 and 3. Why is this important for understanding how long you should stay silent after a breakup? Well, by simply understanding how avoidants operate, you're going to gain insight into the following things. You're going to understand why we're finding most exes aren't reaching out during no contact, and you'll understand why exes often don't consider getting back together until nostalgia hits. So let's tackle the first insight. Why is it that we're finding most exes aren't reaching out during these periods of silence? I want you to think about the first stage that avoidants go through. They avoid all things about that person. Often, when we're advising people to use a no contact rule, they're literally using it during the stage of the avoidant grieving process. Of course, they come into the no contact rule with unrealistic expectations. They see all of these stories, not just propagated by me, because I am 100% guilty of this. I will put my face and say, yes, I'm guilty of doing this. But they'll see all these stories of kind of unrealistic things, like someone whose ex wasn't an avoidant, someone whose ex was anxious, reached out to them 50 different times and begged for them back. They think, well, that could be me. But often those are rare cases. Those are the exceptions to the rule. Often we're finding exes won't be reaching out at all during no contact, which just proves what I'm saying about your intentions during the no contact being all the more important. Silence shouldn't be used at all for an ex. It should be used for yourself, which is a seamless lead into the next point I'd like to make. You need to understand nostalgic reverie. Now, I did a video a couple of years ago where I really talked about what really makes avoidant exes miss you. And I think it's one of my favorite evers because when I filmed it, some of the insights that I talk about there, I still talk about to this day across hundreds of different videos, because I think I've filmed like 70 or 80 videos since I filmed this one video, and I always try to make a point to mention it because it really helps people understand how exes operate who are avoidant and how different it is from how they're operating. So with avoidance, one of the things that we've learned is they don't usually consider coming back until this nostalgic reverie stage hits. Now here's the irony. If you know anything about avoidance, you'll know they're often marked by this strange paradox of wanting love, but not letting anyone close enough to give them that love. And this presents an interesting problem for our clients. How can you get close enough to attract them back to you?